எமது பிற்கூறிய இந்த கூட்டத்தின் தலைவர்களே, டாக்டர் ஜான் சமுவேல் அவர்களே, தமிழ் பேரறிஞர்களே, நண்பர்களே, உங்களுக்கு இன்றைக்கு வணக்கம் கூறுவதில் நான் மகிழ்ச்சி அடைகிறேன். மற்றும் இந்த கூட்டத்தில் கலந்து கொள்வதற்கு நான் நன்றி தெரிவிக்கிறேன். இப்பொழுது ஒரு சிறந்த நூலை பற்றி பேசுவோம். இந்த நூலை பற்றி நான் சில வார்த்தைகளை சொல்ல விரும்புகிறேன். நான் இப்பொழுது ஆங்கில மொழியில் சொல்ல விரும்புகிறேன். So dear colleagues and friends, we are now taking part in a very interesting event, presenting a book of translations of a very interesting piece of literature, of Tamil literature, which is, as you know, called Pandikkovai. I think that everybody in this hall knows that this is the first representative of the famous medieval genre Kovai, and it has many, and besides it is connected with the treatise Iraiyanar Kalaviyal, which was translated previously by Dr. David Buck, whom I want first of all to congratulate on this occasion. I met once Dr. Buck, and I know his translations and his works, and it is a pleasure for me to participate in this event connected with him and connected with this wonderful piece of literature. I think that everybody who studies Tamil literature knows about this word Pandikkovai, but actually it was not so well known among scholars, even though it is a very interesting and peculiar piece of literature. In fact, we know that its main feature is a connection or a combination of two major themes of Tamil poetry, that is Akam and Puram. And it is, as a Puram poetry, it is devoted to Pandiyan king Nedumaran and glorifying his exploits and his bravery and so on. But it is connected with the love story, so to say, which is constructed just along the rules of Akam poetry, of the poetry of lyrical verses, and actually in connection with the rules which are exposed in this treatise Iraiyanar Kalaviyal. As to me, I of course knew about this piece of poetry and even read some small parts of it, but not the whole, I must confess. And now I think that the release of this book has a very good stimulating effect on the studies of Tamil literature. I do hope so. And as to me, I have already started thinking about it, and I found some interesting things, things which I'm going to show you just in order to show that this is really a poem worth investigating. As Dr. Buck notes in his preliminary words about this translation, this Pandikkovai, it's a collection of verses, a string of verses devoted to the king, and the king, so to say, in the context of love story, of love situations. This ties between Akam and Puram Tamil poetry actually are not new, because we know that in practically in all collections of ancient Tamil poetry, I mean Kuruntohei, Natrini, Ahananu, first of all, we find a lot of examples of actually panegyric elements connected with Tamil kings and chieftains, which are, so to say, incorporated in a love situation. But it seems to me that Pandikkovai is the first piece of literature which treats its connection very systematically. Its ties with previous Tamil tradition are obvious. Let me give just two small examples. For instance, the fourth verse, the fourth poem of Pandikkovai, which Dr. Bach translated this way: certain victory his enemies joined him in battle at Iraiyanar, but our king witnessed their exploits in climbing to heaven. In his grand grove here on Mount Podil, deep in the south, you live in your search, tell me now, little bee. So this is actually a poem, a small poem in the genre, very well known in Tamil literature, which is called Tulu. That is a messenger poem. But what is interesting that in fact it is a paraphrase, obvious paraphrase of a famous verse in Kuruntohei. That is the second one, Kurinje Kungu Tervaki Anjire Tumbi, addressing the Tumbi. Also Kamam separe Kandadi Murimo, Paili the Kei, Natpin, Mailil, Siri, Cherive, Kundalin, Narevum Lavo, Ni Arium Puve. Actually, the context, the content of both verses is practically the same, and we can say with to be sure that these two verses are somehow connected, and actually one of them, certainly I think that the Pandikkovai is later, it belongs perhaps to 8th century, but it is based in this case, and not only in this case, but in many other cases, on the tradition of Sangam poetry. The tradition, for instance, this small poem certainly is based on the famous Iraiyanar poem from Kuruntohei, and we can say that it is a paraphrase of this poem. In this connection, Dr. Bach notices and says about a problem which is connected with the origin of this poetry. I mean this Pandikkovai poem. And he says that it is not clear how it was composed. And he suggests, to my mind very rightly, that perhaps there was a sort of a school, and indeed this, the whole set of poems in Pandikkovai reminds one sort of a scholarly or schools even exercises on chosen themes. This is a hypothesis, of course, but I think that perhaps it is true. It is a sort of experimental poetry in a way, And we know, but I want to add some tune to it. Perhaps this is not only the school of poetry which is connected, but also the competitions of poets, perhaps. So they, we know that poets of the Sangam age, Panars, for instance, they competed on the banks of Vai, and perhaps they had what we now call the common theme, and this theme is the main string, so to say, for different poetical compositions. Actually, we had an example of such a composition. I mean the collection called Ainguru Nuru, which also in many ways was constructed this way. Another example, also to my mind very interesting and very rich in consequences, so to say, is the also a small poem, the second poem from the Pandikkovai, that is again addressing the king, but addressing this way. Virei pumpul melurei devam kol andri vintoi varei devam kol vanurei devam kol nirmananda terei devam kol ayam tarum itirunudale. So that is the poetical device of this, which we called ayam or acharyam, before something or some person. And immediately we recollect, first of all, the famous Tirukkural, which is constructed also on this way. Anangakol, Aimail Kollo, Ganankuri, Mother Kol, Malum Yenench. So we just try to find. We are trying to find some ties, some connections with previous literature, and so we see, and I think that further investigations will prove it, that there are connections with Tirukkural and with Purananuru, of course. Again, we recollect this famous poem 49. Nadan yengu, uran yengu, padimish panikaral serpan yengu, yangana muriho, unguval kodeye. So this is the poetical device which is used in all these, three examples, is the same. So to sum up, I'd like to say that I'm not summing up the investigation of this creation, but I just want to say that it is a very vast field of the work, of scholarly work, and I think that I'm repeating myself, that this translation, this book, will help scholars to do such work and to find some many interesting aspects of medieval Tamil literature. So I congratulate Dr. David Bach, and I recollect Dr. Paramasivan, whom I didn't meet, unfortunately, but I know about him. And I recollect the scholars from Institute of Asian Studies. And again, thank you and thank Dr. John Samuel for this invitation. And I wish all the best to all of you, and I think that this publication will be one of the vast collection of very useful and very brilliant done work done in this institute. Thank you so much.